This is one of my favorite stories of werewolves. So I'll read this section, but then I'd like to go to Baringgold's book and read his account of it, which to me is very creepy and just kind of the stuff of nightmares. So, anyways, Jean Grenier, teen wolf wannabe, Bordeaux, France. A young teenager, his age has been estimated between 12 and 14, who ran away from an impoverished, abusive father, became the sensation of southwestern France in 1603. Jean Grenier claimed that not only was he a werewolf, he had also killed and eaten a number of young women and children in the region. Eyewitnesses to some of the attacks, however, had described a wolf-like animal at the scene rather than a teenage human. Lacking evidence or corroboration, the judge in Grenier's trial was forced to rely heavily on the lad's own testimony. Jean Grenier, who was almost certainly suffering from severe emotional and mental disorders, did not require torture to motivate his confession. He freely admitted to committing horrific murders and described a colorful initiation rite with the devil that gave him the power to become a loup-garou, which is French for werewolf. Grenier eagerly explained in court how a few years earlier, a neighbor had taken him deep into the woods where they were met by the devil in form of a man on horseback. The man's title was Lord of the Forest. Okay, that's just funny. I am
Or was
Lord of
this
the
was this
Forest.
Aragorn before he became king?
Right? Maybe it was
Ranger?
Dunedin, a ranger roaming through the woods. So, anyways, he scratched his sign upon Grenier with a fingernail and then gave him the magic cape and salve by which he was transformed. We've probably read about this before, but in a lot of these stories, there's an object like a cape or something and a salve or a lotion that's supposedly made with some there's a flower. I forget the name of the flower just now, but there's a certain flower that they would put in there, wolfsbane maybe, and it would make this salve. And supposedly this salve was what they would rub on their bodies to transform into a werewolf. And that's in a lot of werewolf stories.
I know about Wolfsbane because it's in many RPG games, and I love fantasy role-playing and RPG games. So like Wolfsbane, like I know it from games. But
Yeah.
it reminded me when you mentioned this special power. I mean, the cloak with special powers. Remember when Apostle Paul was in prison? He told was it Timothy, bring me the books, the scrolls, and the cape. So I'm like, maybe he wanted to escape the prison, like do the
Yeah.
Houdini thing. I don't know.
Yeah, a little Harry Potter invisibility cape or something.
Yeah, who knows?
So Grenier also claimed to be the son of a priest when his father was actually known to be Pierre Grenier, a very poor, simple rustic, meaning like a farmer or something. And it was the teen's habit of bragging about his wolfskin cape and a magic salve made of unspecified ingredients that brought him to the attention of the authorities. He had not been able to resist telling one intended victim all about himself before she managed to escape and turn him in, and that's the story I'd like to talk about next. The 13-year-old shepherdess testified that after the red-haired Grenier had boasted of his lycanthropy, she was attacked in a field by a wolf with reddish fur and a stumpy tail. She was able to drive the suspected werewolf away, she said, but it stayed within sight and stared at her. Grenier did not deny this accusation and in fact said that he had murdered several other infants and children who were publicly known to have been killed. Investigators searched for evidence that Grenier had committed these crimes but failed to find anything conclusive. Grenier was convicted nonetheless and sentenced to be hanged to death and then burned. Perhaps because of his age, however, his case was appealed to a higher court, where Grenier again confessed to all his evil deeds. This court was more discerning, evidently. Better questioning pointed out glaring inconsistencies within Grenier's stories, causing him to suddenly change them, and a medical exam showed Grenier was physically malnourished. Grenier was declared stupid and idiotic. That's quite a diagnosis. And his exploits were deemed to have been hallucinations. Grenier was finally given the unusual sentence of banishment to the monastery of the Cordeliers in Bordeaux. where monks sequestered him from other human contact.
Dane,
Imagine being
sorry to
imagine being a
interrupt,
monk.
sorry to interrupt, but imagine finishing
Yeah.
your research paper and in concluding paragraph you're like, well, I disagree with this I don't know scholar because he's quote unquote he's stupid and idiotic. Like you will be kicked banned from the school. I'm sorry, like
But
this
you
is
know, how
this is
many
my
of us
best
have wanted to
conclusion.
say that, right? Imagine being one of those monks having to watch this kid. And who got that? Probably the newbie, probably the new guy.
Imagine you're a newbie in a monastery, just you and this evil person in the same room, and like this person starts levitating. You're like knocking on the door, open, please let me go. They're like, no,
Open up,
this is
open
the
up.
test. If you pass the test, if you spend the night and survive, you'll become a monk tomorrow. And you're like, I don't want to be a monk.
Yeah. Um, so many historians see his trial as a landmark case that set a precedent for considering mental illness and other factors in judging alleged sorcerers rather than automatically charging them with heretical and magical practices. So this is actually an important case in, I would say, when is this? Did it say when this was? 1603. So that's the 15th century, so that's not medieval anymore. But I would imagine for some years that was probably by like lawyers was considered.
That's the beginning of 17th century.
Oh right, 17th century. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 1603. Yeah. Um, so Grenier did not thrive at the monastery despite decent treatment there. He died only 8 years after his arrival. But one man who visited him before his death, Pierre de Lancre, made some interesting observations about Grenier's appearance. He said that Grenier was short, with black, deep-set eyes. His long nails were darkened, and his brown teeth jutted from his mouth. Descriptions that made Grenier sound almost feral. In other words, despite Grenier's sad physical condition and lack of grooming, he was still plainly a human being. Even though his first accusers were determined to execute him, they could present no evidence that he turned into a wolf or even that he murdered anyone, although it's possible that Grenier was a psychotic serial killer. And while history has branded Jean Grenier as a werewolf, his tale seems unrelated to modern sightings of upright canines. We will have to look elsewhere to explain America's wolfmen. And so I do have this Baring Gould's book here. Got a cool cover on it. And so I don't want to read the story from here. I don't think it's too long, but I just
Is
like
it
the way.
published? But is it published? I'm sorry. Is it published and or translated by Judd Burton?
I believe Judd Burton does have a version. Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I think I bought the PDF from him a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so Jean Grenier. One fine afternoon in the spring, some village girls were tending their sheep on the sand dunes, which intervene between the vast forests of pine covering the greater portion of the present department of Landis in the south of France and the sea. The brightness of the sky, the freshness of the air puffing up off the blue twinkling Bay of Biscay, the hum or song of the wind as it made rich music among the pines which stood like green uplifted wave on the east, the beauty of the sandhills speckled with golden cistus or patched with gentian blue, by the low growing Gramille couchee, the charm of the forest skirts, tinted variously with foliage and cork trees, pines and acacia. The latter in full bloom. Okay, he goes on to describe everything. I'm just going to skip that. um, the maidens were singing, and their singing rung merrily over the hills and through the dark avenues of evergreens. Now, a gorgeous butterfly attracted their attention, and then a flight of quails skimming on the surface. Ah, exclaimed Jacqueline Azun. Ah, if I had my stilts and bats, I would strike the birds down, and we should have a fine supper. Now, if they would fly ready cooked into one's mouth, as they do in the foreign parts, said another girl. Have you got any new clothes? Okay, I'm just going to skip past some of this stuff. So the girls are talking. And anyways, the girls ran into a spot and saw a little fall in the ground in which, seated on a log of fir, was a boy of 13. The appearance of the lad was peculiar. His hair was of a tawny red and thickly matted, falling over his shoulders and completely covering his narrow brow. His small, pale gray eyes twinkled with an expression of horrible ferocity and cunning from deep sunken hollows. The complexion was of dark olive color, and the teeth were strong and white, and the canine teeth protruded over the lower lip when the mouth was closed. The boy's hands were large and powerful, the nails black and pointed like birds' talons. He was ill clothed and seemed to be in the most abject poverty. The few garments he had on him were in tatters, and though the rents and emaciation of his limbs was plainly visible, so he was really skinny. The girls stood around him, half frightened and much surprised, but the boy showed no symptoms of astonishment. His face relaxed into a ghastly leer, which showed the whole range of his glittering white fangs. Well, my maidens, he said with a harsh voice, which of you is the prettiest, I should like to know. Can you decide amongst you? What do you want to know for? Asked Jean Gaberant, the eldest of the girls, aged 18, who took upon herself to be spokesman for the rest. Because I shall marry the prettiest, he said. Ah, said Jeanne jokingly. That is if she will have you, which is not very likely, as none of us know you or anything about you. I am the son of a priest, replied the boy curtly. Is that why you look so dingy and black? No, I am dark-colored because I wear a wolf skin sometimes. A wolf skin, echoed the girl. And pray who gave it to you? One called Pierre Labrant. There is no man of that name hereabouts. Where does he live? A scream of laughter mingled with howls and breaking into strange gulping bursts of fiend-like merriment from the strange boy. The girls recoiled, and the youngest took refuge behind Jean. Do you want to know Pierre Labrant, lass? Hey, he is a man with an iron chain about his neck, which he is ever engaged in gnawing. Do you want to know where he lives, lass? In a place of gloom and fire, where there are many companions, some seated on iron chairs, burning, others stretched on glowing beds, burning too. Some cast upon blazing coals, others roast men before fierce flames, others again plunge them into cauldrons of liquid fire. So my guess is Pierre Labrant is Satan. The girls trembled and looked at each other with scared faces, and then again the hideous being which crouched before them. You want to know about the wolfskin cape? Continued he. Pierre Labrant gave me that. He wraps it around me, and every Monday, Friday, and Sunday, and for about an hour at dusk every other day, I am a wolf, a werewolf. I have killed dogs and drunk their blood, but little girls taste better. Their flesh is tender and sweet, their blood rich and warm. I have eaten many a maiden, as I have been on my raids together with my 9 companions. I am a werewolf. Ha ha! If the sun were to set, I would soon fall on one of you and make a meal of you. Again he burst into one of his frightful paroxysms of laughter, and the girls were unable to endure it any longer and fled with precipitation. I just thought the way that was worded was really kind of horrific, you know? So that's why I wanted to kind of.
It was both mental and funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like this dude needed an exorcist, but also a psychologist. Like both of them, not either or, both. He needed both.
Yes, which is probably true of these lycanthropic people. So